Chapter 827. With that, the elite entered the transparent elevator. Just as he was about to press the button with his left hand, a person walked over. Just then, a person came over. He looked very fair and clean, and he was wearing a cinema uniform. He also wore a pair of black glasses on his face, which covered most of his face. The elite didn't take a closer look at the person. He just felt that it was weird for the cinema staff to walk over at this moment. Was he heading down to buy something? The two of them headed to the same floor. When they entered the elevator, Bojo realized that there was something wrong with the person behind her. His disguise wasn't bad. But it was because of his good disguise. That was why Bojo noticed the details. The earpiece was special. Those who didn't know wouldn't be able to tell what it was. But before her rebirth, Bojo had been in the Fifth Avenue dealing with people from all walks of life. If one took a closer look, they would be able to tell that only the military would have such earpieces. However, since when did the military learn to disguise themselves? And in such a professional manner. If she hadn't recognized the earpiece, she would have assumed that he was just an ordinary person watching a movie. Bojo watched the reflection in the elevator. She could feel him looking at her as well. His observation skills made her think of the Almighty. She seemed to have understood something. Bojo arched a brow. She buttoned the last button on her uniform, her gaze dimming. If the Almighty was here, she would have to restrain herself. The suspect would be easy to deal with. The Almighty's subordinates wouldn't be easy. The Almighty's subordinates wouldn't be easy to deal with. Fortunately, they had met here. If they had met in the cinema, she might have been at a disadvantage. Bojo lowered her lids, her lips lifting. She had underestimated the Almighty's ability. She had thought that it was just the crime squad. But now, it seemed like it wasn't just the crime squad. She really didn't know what other people were there besides this elite. What else would the people who had set up the Shadow City be like? She had never fought against the Almighty face to face. This was the first time. The true first time. With such an opponent. The game would be interesting. But the more she admired him. Bojo felt that if she really couldn't control herself and wanted to take the Almighty away one day, it wouldn't just be using her connections. Even the Almighty's subordinates wouldn't be easy to deal with. Bojo reached out to press her sleeves. She mustn't reveal the little thing inside. The elevator reached the 5th floor. She no longer cared about the whereabouts of the people behind her. She only remembered that face. Then, she walked straight to the side of a staff member and said with a smile, "Still a lot of people." "You." The staff member wanted to say something. Bojo smiled brightly, revealing her canine teeth. "I'm a new employee." The staff also laughed. "Come and take a look." "I'm going to the restroom. There are too many people today. It's going to explode. Please check the tickets carefully." "All right." Bojo turned and stood there. She was still wearing her black gloves. Her uniform and work pass were of high quality. Indeed, there wasn't a single flaw in her attire. There wasn't a problem passing off the fake as the genuine one. Seeing this, the elite man retracted his gaze and stood in front of the ticketing machine. It looked like he was collecting tickets, but he was actually on the phone. "The fish hasn't appeared yet. Wait for further instructions." After finishing this sentence, he took a sip of coffee. His movements were extremely natural, and his technique of blending into the crowd was done very well. Chapter 828. In the meeting room. After Chinemo received all the blueprints, he scanned them from top to bottom and closed his eyes quietly. Profiling. It wasn't just targeted at criminals. A skilled profiler would be able to come up with various routes based on the environment. And Chin Mo was the best of the best in this field. Perhaps not many people knew about Chin Mo. But his code name was Young Master. Child in English. It was a name that everyone in the international community knew about. If one was in the industry and had read books in this field, he would definitely have read his thesis in an authoritative journal. Profilers were usually very good at science, especially mathematics. Deep mathematics was about logical thinking. Just like the movie Suspect, a problem might seem like a geometry problem, but in reality, it was a function problem. How to solve some problems. Placing oneself in the other party's line of thought would allow one to grasp the point quickly. If it was him, how would he come up with the escape route and be discovered? First of all, he needed to take off this eye-catching set of combat clothes. Lastly, he had to find a dark hooded jacket that wouldn't catch anyone's attention. It was far from the exit and it would affect the time needed to leave. If there was a safe passage in between, Chin Mo opened his eyes. Like a ray of light, his gaze landed on the left side of the meeting room. It was only a few hundred meters long and there was a fork about 100 meters away. It wasn't easy to find a single person in a video with so many people. But if there weren't many people, it wouldn't be too difficult. Chin Mo paced, his footsteps carrying the wind, but there wasn't a hint of panic. His aura was natural. He held his phone in his left hand, not bothering about the commotion on the other end, interrupting Director Huang's excitement. Get your men over to the surveillance room. Director Huang was excited. You want to help? That's great, with your ability and our ability, we will definitely succeed. Oh. Chin Mo's voice was calm. What do you intend to do? Arrest him. Director Huang narrowed his eyes. Of course, that person is too dangerous. He's an AIDS carrier and is constantly looking for new targets to kill. We aren't sure who the next target is and we don't know who leaked the news. Just a moment ago, there was an online report about it. The media has already started an investigation and the higher-ups have ordered us to solve the case within 48 hours. If we don't solve this case, it will be even more difficult for us to deal with the public opinion. After Chin Mo heard that, he only said one sentence. First, confirm if he is really a criminal. Even if you catch him, without evidence, everything will be in vain. This was what Director Huang was worried about. Without evidence, he could only imprison the other party for 24 hours at most. And if it wasn't this person? If news of their operation were to leak out, they would not be able to survive. It only makes people wary of the real criminals. Director Huang gritted his teeth at the thought. After all, this case was too unique. All the suspects were deduced from Chin Mo's psychological profile. However, they had not found out whether there was anyone among these people, so they could not be sure. There were too many people at the hotel that day, so he could only make a rough judgment based on their height and appearance. There were many loopholes in this judgment. You know, the higher-ups. Director Huang scratched his head. Chapter 829. With Chin Mo's words. Director Huang felt much more confident. Actually, he was under pressure. The higher-ups wanted them to solve it quickly. But the culprit's methods were too skilled and his anti-investigation ability was too strong. After the case, if it hadn't been for Chin Mo's directions, they might still be searching for a needle in a haystack. The crime squad had changed in recent years. Director Huang understood that, but fortunately, his subordinates were hot-blooded. They had sacrificed a lot to maintain the safety of the city. Actually, this was how it was like to be a detective. If they couldn't solve the case, they would be criticized by the citizens. Director Huang had to admit that some of the external staff were used to minimizing the big problem and turning it into nothing. They were used to not doing anything. He couldn't explain the system. But there was still a group of people who would stay in the car for 24 hours just to catch a criminal, afraid that they would miss any clues. And he was the same as that group of people, seeking a clear conscience in this industry. Director Huang placed the pen in his hand down and called his subordinates. They wouldn't arrest him as per Qin Mo's instructions. As for the higher-ups, at most, he would be scolded again. At this moment, Qin Mo didn't go to the surveillance room. Even though he knew that if he went to the surveillance room, he would be able to find out what that guy was disguised as from the clues he had, he still didn't go. Perhaps this was Qin Mo. There was an invisible police uniform on his body. At such a moment, he could put his emotions behind him and take on all the responsibilities he could. And it was because of Qin Mo. That was why Bojiu wanted to bring him back. This world was too flashy. But there was such a person. He had a clear and cold aura like a jade tree, bright and clear, aloof from the world. He would never be swallowed by the darkness. He was completely different from her. It made her heart itch just by looking at him. But Bojiu didn't have the time to think about Qin Mo now. She had asked Hoshino to prepare for the day purely to get close to the suspect and find evidence while also finding clues about the person impersonating her. She didn't have the intention to leave now since the National League wasn't over. But there were some things she couldn't control. Some people used the excuse of liking her to commit evil deeds, distorting the truth and forcing her to leave early. Bojiu knew that she could settle many things, but she couldn't do anything about human nature. Whether it was the organizers who pretended to be fans or those who were incited, if they did it the first time, it was fine. If they did it the second time, they could say that they were still young. If they did it the third time, they knew what they were doing was hurtful, yet they still said that they were wronged. The existence of these two people was like a small criminal base in today's society. The core of their distorted worldview was selfishness. They didn't like anything but themselves, so they didn't care about ruining other people's hard work. After all, they still had a trick up their sleeves. They could say that they used to be true fans who were forced to become anti-fans, or some groundless scandals. Being despicable was always the pass for the despicable, and this had nothing to do with age. Chapter 830. Lawyer Bai was a clear-minded person, reminding her, with your identity, dealing with them will only give them a reason to accuse you of bullying the weak. Don't forget, you are a member of Supreme Alliance and your actions represent the public. Of course, if you don't deal with them, both you and Supreme Alliance will have to bear the blame since you are professional players. She didn't reply immediately, waiting for Uncle Ian to leave before replying. If I wasn't a professional player, would I be able to deal with them? Supreme Alliance wanted to fight a vigorous esports competition. How could they allow such a group of people to tarnish the competition with so many people's hard work? She wore the combat uniform to win. If some people wanted to hit her with the 1-inch punch, then she would take off the combat uniform and go and clear the obstacles. The suspects were the first to be dealt with because to Bojiu, there was nothing more important than a human life. In certain aspects, they were extremely similar. It was hard to imagine that one of them was in the open while the other was in the dark, but they were the same type of people. They wanted to catch criminals. Even though their methods were completely different. Bojiu glanced up, glancing at the clock hanging in the middle of the theater. The ticketing began. At this moment, the elite man's earphones rang. He hadn't expected it to be his boss. Don't go in, pass me the ticket, I'll go. These few words made the elite man stop in his tracks. After rubbing the bridge of his nose, he followed the young master's instructions and turned around, heading for the emergency exit on this floor. After hanging up, the elite male tried to hold it in. He really couldn't hold it in any longer and wanted to find someone to gossip with. Hey, brothers, what are you guys doing? Eating an ice cream cone. Queuing for fries, what's wrong? What did he mean by what's wrong? Fatty started arguing. I'm using my laptop to monitor the internet. It's so hot, what are you guys doing? There's even someone queuing for fries, what the heck? Young master told us to be more natural. We just returned and it's only natural for us to blend in. The food in Jiang City isn't bad, it's much better than in America. Shut up. Fatty was sweating profusely from the heat, taking over the surveillance room. What they wanted to see was who else would follow them other than the key case investigation unit. As for the matter of returning, Fatty only found out about it today. On the surface, he had always been an external member of Supreme Alliance. In fact, he was by the young master's side, and his role was to contact the outside world. I say, stop arguing. The elite tugged on his tie. Everyone, tell me, why did young master suddenly want to move on his own? Look at how awesome my outfit is. The SWAT soldier tossed the cotton candy stick away and climbed up to the roof. Because you can't get the evidence out of him, only young master can do it. The person in line put a fry in his mouth. I'm fine. Those people from the Major Crimes Division might have alerted the big fish behind the small fish. It's not strange that young master would make a move. I don't think it's that simple. The elite man rubbed his chin, determined to get to the bottom of the gossip. Didn't Fatty say that young master has a crush on a guy? Does that guy not like young master? Young master must have suffered a blow, that's why he became like this. Chapter 831. Through the earpiece, the voice managed to reach everyone's ears. Fatty immediately pretended not to hear anything. He kept quiet and started to encourage his friends. The other two were lying on the ground like corpses. That was awkward. They were gossiping about their boss being caught behind their backs. The elite's scalp turned numb. He turned around and saw the elegant and handsome face. Somehow, he felt touched. It had been a long time since he had seen his boss alive. Young master, I'm definitely concerned about you. The elite tried to explain himself. Chin Mo arched a brow. He didn't waste any time and took action. Thank you for your concern. The elite watched as his boss robbed him of his jacket, gold-rimmed glasses and his handbag. He didn't even leave a watch for him. In the end, he was left with a pair of long johns and a shirt. As a magician, he had never been in such dire straits. Compared to his boss, who was full of charisma, he looked like he had just been robbed. Wait a minute, young master, at least leave me a wallet. Chin Mo naturally wouldn't stop. He even changed his hairstyle. His usually loose black hair was combed to the back of his head. There was a scar on his face and he looked cold and restrained. At this moment, Fatty sent a message. The suspect has arrived from the surveillance cameras. They are now checking the tickets. Chin Mo tossed his handbag to the elite. His left hand pressed on his earpiece and tucked it into his black hair. This was the perfect disguise. The elite hugged himself at the side. He couldn't help but ask, young master, you clearly know that the person who appeared this time is a fake C. Why did you get the crime squad to investigate this case? Because the fake one is more dangerous than the real one. Chin Mo's voice was calm but his gaze was deep. Z wouldn't do that. What do you mean by that? The elite wanted to know what his boss was thinking. Chin Mo stopped in his tracks. Do you think the person I treat as my opponent would make use of others to do things? Z has always been a lone wolf. Not harming people's lives is her principle. From the maiden sacrifice to the AIDS case, every time Z went against the police, it was always because there was an inside story behind the case. These two cases were just people using others to commit crimes. The essence is different. If that's the case, why didn't you tell Director Huang that it's fake? Director Huang might really think Z is the one behind the operation. The elite was impressed by Z since they hadn't been able to capture her in the past. Chin Mo raised his hand to adjust his collar, looking at his completely different appearance and aura through the window, his gaze as deep as the night. Because I want to know who the real Z is. The elite man was shocked when he heard this. Young master had cast such a big net. Other than catching the fake Z. So there was such a layer of thinking. Chin Mo glanced at his movie tickets. If Z is really around, she wouldn't allow anyone to use her name to do such a thing. The elite frowned. Was it an illusion? He felt that the young master's interest in Z hadn't decreased after losing a certain part of his memory. Why was that? 2 years ago, this kind of thinking had clearly faded a lot. What was going on this year? The elite man had a feeling that his return this time. Something big would happen. But if he could meet Z again. Chapter 832. At the ticket counter, the black-haired youngster lifted the corners of her lips. It was a professional smile. Even the black gloves she was wearing suited the environment. Sir, please show me your ticket. Even Fatty, who was watching the surveillance, couldn't recognize who that person was. Firstly, it was because of the change in hair color, and secondly, the black-framed spectacles. Moreover, the ticket counter was much fatter than Bojo's usual figure. He wouldn't be able to recognize her unless he scrutinized the details. Besides, Fatty's attention was on the suspect. Naturally, he wouldn't be paying attention to anything else. Hence, he didn't notice the glint in the eyes of the ticket counter, who had his back facing the suspect. The man in front of him fit the Almighty's profile analysis perfectly. He was not very old, about 30 years old, less than 1.8 meters tall. Although his appearance was not very outstanding, it could be said that he was well-defined, very tasteful. He wore a watch that cost about 100,000 yuan on his hand. His hair was styled with something, which made him look like a successful person. In addition, this person was wearing cologne, which made him look clean and particular. Indeed, such a person would be able to ease the grudges of the girls nowadays. It would probably be easy to ask someone out. But she still needed evidence. When she was checking the tickets, she glanced at his ticket stub before passing it back. I hope you enjoy your movie. The man wasn't bothered by the ticket counter. He held the ticket in one hand and his phone in the other. On the screen of the phone, a chat app was opened. Bojo didn't see the content. But would such a man come to watch a movie on his own? What's more, he was holding a Swarovski box in his hand. Bojo glanced over and told another ticket counter, I'm going to the toilet. Ah. His colleague was confused. But the youngster was walking too quickly and was in the crowd. Helpless, he continued to check the tickets. Fatty wasn't sensitive about such things. Besides, it was normal to change the ticket counter at the last minute in a movie theater. He glanced up and landed on the suspect. Young master, after he deposited the item, he went inside. I can't see him from here. Got it. Chin Mo's voice came through the earpiece, carrying a different magnetism. I'm checking the tickets. Fatty was stunned. He looked at the figure in the queue on the screen and almost jumped up. Why was his young master dressed like that? It was really unexpected. This bad thing had too much flavor. From a god to a devil. Send me the surveillance footage of the suspect when he was checking the tickets. Also, find out which of the 5 exits of the cinema is a blind spot. Magician, head there. If you see the person loitering there, follow him. The elite man looked at his long johns. No, young master, are you going to let me pass like this? 10 minutes is enough for you to get a set of clothes. Chin Mo lowered his lids, handing the ticket over to the ticket collector. The girl was inexplicably shocked. She thought to herself that there were really a lot of handsome guys who came to watch movies alone nowadays. At this moment, Bojio moved an unused 3D glasses box over and placed it on the bar counter beside the luggage box. She tried to wipe the lenses of the glasses, occasionally saying, "Customers watching the 6:50 p.m. movie, please head inside, all 7. Chapter 833. Once she was clear of all the surveillance angles, Bojio discreetly shifted the 3D glasses case upwards. The angle it blocked was coincidentally the suspect's storage cabinet. Once she was done, Bojio narrowed her eyes. There wasn't enough time for her to get the password. If she pulled it forcefully, the alarm system would be triggered. Why not let someone else open it? Bojio arched a brow and broke a pair of glasses. The 3D glasses broke the alarm system on the cupboard. Then she stood up and walked towards the manager like a competent staff member. "Manager, there's a problem with the storage cupboard." The manager followed her immediately. He took a look at the storage cabinet. There was indeed something wrong. In such a situation, they could only reboot it and restore the password. That would take some time. At this moment, the movie was about to start. Chinemo walked along the darkened tunnel, glancing at the faint light coming from his seat. He stopped, his voice calm. "Excuse me." This sentence was directed at the two best friends behind the suspect. Chinemo didn't even glance at them. He was just like an ordinary audience member. The best friend retracted her legs. The girl couldn't help but exclaim, "So handsome." The suspect turned back to glance at Chinemo. Some men would compare themselves with others. After seeing Chinemo, the suspect sized him up from head to toe. Other than being taller, he didn't have any good points. His aura wasn't bad, but it was a pity he had a scar on his face. But as long as he had money, it wouldn't stop women from pouncing on him. The man hid in the darkness, his lips curved into a mocking smile. Chinemo sat down indifferently. Actually, this seat was a little too narrow for him. It was difficult for him to stretch his long legs. But even so, he didn't reveal any discomfort on his face. This was the only way he could see the actions of the person in front of him. The seat beside the suspect was good. But it couldn't be compared to the seat behind him. In such a small theater, the space in between was extremely small. People were used to using their right hand to look at their phones. Moreover, the theater was pitch black. Whenever there was a light, the front row would be able to see the back row clearly. Hence, even though Rao Rong had entered the theater long ago, he hadn't expected the suspect to be sitting in that position. But Rao Rong wasn't stupid. If he had known that the major crime squad would be involved. Of course, he had taken precautions. According to their deduction, the people on both sides of the man were most likely from the crime squad. Hence, Rao Rong sat far away from the man at the exit of the theater. Even if he wanted to contact him, he would use his virtual IP. This was to prevent the people from the key case investigation unit from targeting the man. At the same time, he could also help the man escape. If he felt that something was wrong, he would ask the man to stop the appointment immediately. After all, from this position, he could observe everyone who came in. However, from the moment he came in until now, everything was normal. Even the man's front, back, left and right. That person had just checked on the computer, and everything was fine. They were all here to watch the movie. Some are lovers, some are friends. The background was also very clean. However, just to be safe, he still had to wait for the news. Only then would Rao Rong do what he was about to do. The moment the movie started, a series of crackling sounds came from his Bluetooth earpiece. On the other end of his Bluetooth headset, there was a crackling sound. Finally, as if he had hit the enter key, countless images appeared before his eyes. Other than the surveillance cameras, the rest of the people from the Major Crimes Division are all at the main exits, waiting to arrest the suspect. If they want to arrest someone, let them. Once they arrest someone, they can just let them cry out in grievance. The police have already formed a fixed pattern. They are either watching the surveillance or blocking the exits. Rao Rong chuckled, still handsome. He lowered his voice so low that no one could hear him. They definitely haven't played hero before. They wouldn't even know how to form a team to catch someone. They have to learn. You chose to take action today to avoid Chin Mo, didn't you? Now isn't the time to go against him. The person in front of the computer had a calm expression on his face. The best way to defeat them is to destroy their hearts. For someone like Chin Mo, no matter how smart he is, he has to abide by his so-called principles. Anyone's life can be a threat to him, not to mention those who are important to him. This can be our breakthrough point. After all, in this society, there are many people who can say that they are wronged after being forced into a corner. That young Master Fu should have experienced this pain. The Wu family did a good job, pretending to be a fan, first infringing on the rights of others before making a fuss. In the end, she took the opportunity to bite back. It's a pity she's already in prison, otherwise, we would be able to find out more about the police's movements. But it doesn't matter, what's happening now is just child's play. When the time comes, Chin Mo will know that the human heart isn't as strong as he thinks, it's easy to break. Rao Rong listened to the words in the earpiece, glancing up at the booking notification on his phone. 30 minutes later, the sky turned dark. Someone took the bait. Look at our harvesters, they seem to be addicted to it. Go, I will keep an eye on the people from the Key Case Investigation Unit. Tell him not to drive the car in B2, there are people guarding it. Go to B3, a dark black Honda SUV. Tell him that the car key is in the Swarovski package he bought. Remember, don't touch it, use your cell phone to inform him of any news. Rao Rong leaned back, his gaze heavy. I understand. If it's just the people from the crime squad, even if they leave, they probably won't notice. Every plot is within my expectations, but I'm afraid Chin Mo will ask for a last-minute adjustment. But he probably doesn't have the time now. So what if they won the competition? The impact of Wu Zhen's actions will still be felt. Rao Rong, don't belittle those high schoolers who feel wronged after taking advantage of others. Using the words true love as a prelude to distort the truth, it won't be easy to deal with them. This will help our plan and divert Chin Mo's attention. Chin Mo won't be able to leave anytime soon unless he doesn't care about Supreme Alliance's reputation, Rao Rong replied faintly, that's why I hate being a professional player. After this incident, Chin Mo will probably hate it as well. There are too many liars in this world, some even taking other people's glory as their own, accusing others after stealing something. It isn't because they are young, but because they have no bottom line. That's what you want Chin Mo to know. There are many people who can't be saved and yet, you have to watch them gloat because they didn't kill anyone, it was just a small crime. But the lethality of these small crimes isn't any less than a stab. The person in front of the computer stopped typing. Rao Rong, are you blaming me? I wasn't involved in Wu Zhen's incident. I've said it before, I don't have to do anything. Stealing someone else's thing makes them a criminal. Was I the one who asked them to steal? Rao Rong, Rao Rong, that's what they wanted to do. Those who didn't want to do it wouldn't have joined them. I'm just a bystander. But thanks to them, the maiden's sacrifice can be restarted because I've found a new target. She's injured and weak, one touch and she'll probably break. Look at how painful it is to live, I'll go and console her. Rao Rong didn't want to discuss this topic anymore, he was already numb. Before he had returned, he had seen the youngster's interview. He guessed that Spade Z must have been comforting herself. There wasn't any justice in this world, it was a pity that Rao Rong was wrong. Regardless of whether it was Bojio or Chin Mo, they would always know what was most important. Their hearts wouldn't change, they would be able to hold a long sword and slay the evil dragon no matter what happened. The other party wouldn't have expected it. She thought she understood them well. But in reality, it was just the tip of the iceberg. Even her reactions were within Qin Mo's calculations. Any criminal's style would be reflected in the incident itself. Qin Mo had allowed his subordinates to return because he had already profiled the criminal's psychology. He was familiar with the crime squad's style. He had even purposely left some traces. He wanted others to think that she was Z. But the other party had forgotten. Doing good deeds might not reflect a person's inner thoughts. But evil deeds would definitely reveal their true intentions. Z's uniqueness. Not everyone could imitate her. But there was one person. Qin Mo's eyes dimmed, his fingers caressing the ticket. It didn't seem logical. At this moment, his phone rang. It was the surveillance video that Fatty had sent him. Qin Mo's gaze deepened with the appearance of the suspect. In the end, he fixed his gaze on his right hand. Stop at 50 seconds, take a screenshot. Fatty immediately sent a photo over. Qin Mo zoomed in and typed a few words in the group chat. He came with something. Magician, check the packaging Yu Hongliang placed in the locker. No problem. Magician had already changed into a trendy hip style, completely different from his elite male outfit. It was easy to get another movie ticket. He went straight to the counter and bought the one before the start. Anyway, young master was already in the broadcasting room. He didn't have to watch any movies. He just had to find a way to pry open the locker. After Magician was done checking the tickets, he tugged at his collar, stepped on the soft carpet, and strolled towards the lockers. He hadn't expected the ticket inspector to be so rash. He hadn't even looked in front of him when he walked over, almost knocking into him. Fortunately, he reacted quickly, turning his body to avoid being hit by the 3D glasses in the inspector's hands. "I'm sorry, sir, I didn't bump into you, did I?" The inspector looked anxious, wearing black-rimmed glasses. He looked like the type that was usually dumb. Magician didn't mind, shaking his head. Oh, a new employee. It was indeed easy to make mistakes. This was the third time he had seen the inspector today. Poor kid, he hadn't met a boss like young master. If young master were to teach him a lesson, he would be able to change his reckless behavior in minutes. "It's okay, you can go." With that, Magician continued towards his destination. Unbeknownst to him, the inspector behind him lifted the 3D glasses basket, the corners of his lips lifted, looking devilishly handsome. He wasn't dumb at all. Instead, he had obtained another piece of information. It turned out that the Almighty had subordinates that knew how to disguise themselves. That explained why the Almighty had always been suspicious of her. But from the looks of it, she was still one step ahead of the Almighty. At the very least, she had gotten the item first. Bojo swept a glance over the box buried under the 3D glasses basket, walking out of the viewing area naturally. In the corridor, Bojo placed the glasses basket down, tugging on her jacket. With one hand holding the box, she didn't forget to remove her uniform, throwing it into the bin at the side. In the blink of an eye, she seemed to have changed into a different person. Her black hair was tied up with a headband, revealing her exquisite features. Her white shirt had its tie removed and she wore a rivet bracelet on her wrist, giving off an arrogant vibe. It had been a long time since she dressed up like this. Bojo glanced at herself through the window, whistling before opening the bag. There wasn't anything strange about the Swarovski accessories. The strange thing was, there was a Honda car key inside. Bojo arched a brow, dialing a familiar number. Hoshino, what car did he drive when he arrived? A BMW X1. Hoshino's gaze deepened. Other than the crime squad, there are other people around you. There's a special forces soldier at the entrance of the 5th floor. Bojo smiled faintly. You noticed that? Alright, I know where to go. Where's the ventilation on the 5th floor? Leave the suspect to the major crimes unit. It's time to catch the mastermind behind this. Alright. Hoshino was still swiping the tablet casually when he frowned, his voice fading. There's someone on the ceiling. Bojo paused, glancing up, her voice deep. Help me check where Chin-mo is now. Hoshino placed the tablet down. There's no news, he's the one trying to catch you. He's starting to suspect you and knows your route. Chapter 834. Alright. Hoshino stood up, still holding on to his phone. According to your location, there are 2 paths you can take. 1. Retreat now. 2. There will be a Boonie Bears cosplay in 3 minutes. There will be a lot of people and I believe you have a way to blend into the crowd. Bojo kept her car keys, stuffing one hand into her pocket and smiling mischievously. I need a girlfriend. It's a pity I'm not. Hoshino slid his fingers, already used to her way of speaking. Bojo scanned the surroundings. It's weird for someone as handsome as me to watch a movie alone. I don't have a girlfriend, it will only give people the impression that I'm not alone. With that, she hung up the phone and walked into the crowd. She took out her wallet and asked the cashier at the counter, "Do you have a bucket of popcorn?" There are 2 of us. Hello sir, if there are 2 of you, it would be more suitable to buy a set meal for 2. Other than the popcorn, there are also 2 cups of Coke. The staff at the theater had always been nice. Bojo smiled faintly. Then I'll take the set meal for 2. Alright, enjoy your movie. The cashier passed the items to Bojo with a smile. Bojo walked to the resting area with the popcorn placed in front of her face and 2 cups of Coke. She looked like a rich second generation waiting for his girlfriend. There were some girls who couldn't help looking over but they wouldn't realize it was Spadesy. With the headband and bracelet, as well as that different expression, it was indeed hard to recognize her. But no matter how perfect the disguise was, it couldn't fool familiar people. Especially Chin-mo, who liked to pay attention to the details. The surveillance footage was about to end. The suspect's image was coming to an end. Fatty was about to cut off the transmission. Chin-mo suddenly typed, "Send me the contents of the first 3 seconds as well." The first 3 seconds? Fatty bit the cable of the earpiece and sent another part of the surveillance footage over. Is there any difference? Chin-mo didn't answer his question, instead, he sent a few words. Slow down a little more, stop. Stop. Fatty looked at the ticket inspector who appeared on the monitor. He didn't understand what his young master was looking at. Chin-mo narrowed his eyes. It was as though a black mist was being emitted from his eyes, sending chills down one's spine. His fingertips pressed on the words. Look for the ticketing staff, there's something wrong with him. Something's wrong. Fatty could not tell. His uniform is still there. What's wrong? Chin-mo replied quickly, there are so many people at the ticket check-in. Normal ticketing staff would be looking down at the tickets and checking the tickets as soon as possible. They wouldn't bother to look at the appearance of a person who came to watch the movie. This person has been sizing you Hongliang up for too long, 10 seconds. He isn't simple. When Fatty heard that, he looked at the surveillance footage again and found it strange. Is it the big fish behind this? No. Chin-mo's gaze was cold. Through the phone screen, Fatty could not see the chill in his boss' eyes. It's not the big fish behind us. What's that? The boy you are talking about, the boy I like. Chin-mo replied in the group chat. Magician almost fainted when he saw it. The other 3 didn't dare to speak. The air in the earpiece seemed to have frozen. Fatty suddenly looked up and widened his eyes. The boy boss likes. Chapter 8:35. Fatty was confused. Even if he managed to react, he didn't dare to ask. How was he supposed to ask? What was Little Spade doing? Who would wear a ticket inspector's uniform for no reason? He was obviously hiding something. But Fatty felt that his boss must have seen wrongly. The person in front of him was a size fatter than Little Spade. Fatty hesitated for a moment before speaking up. "Young master, did you get the wrong person?" This time, Chin Mo didn't type. He turned his head and lowered his voice, enunciating each word coldly. "What did I get wrong, the boy I like?" His earpiece turned cold again. Magician's feet slipped. He had been wondering why young master was acting so strangely today. So he had been abandoned. Fatty was also a blind man. He asked so many questions, but why didn't he get to the main point? For example, why did the person who abandoned the young master appear here? Wait a minute. Ticket inspector. Magician abruptly stopped in his tracks and subconsciously turned around to look for the bespectacled ticketing attendant that he had bumped into earlier. However, the attendant was long gone. His fingers pressed on his earphones. "I just ran into him, he was near the locker." Chin Mo's fingers moved slightly. "Magician, go downstairs and bring Aardwolf up." "Go downstairs." But the thing. Magician didn't understand why young master had suddenly changed his mind. Before he could finish, he saw another sentence appear in the group chat. "The things in the cabinet are gone." Gone. Magician's eyes widened. "Young master, you mean, the ticket inspector. What the heck, wasn't that the boy you liked? Why was he stealing from us?" He didn't dare to ask the last sentence, leaving it regretfully. Chin Mo didn't let Magician continue looking. It was simple. Since the two of them had met, Magician's current appearance should have been exposed too. It was better to leave it at the exit. Even if that fellow climbed out from the ceiling, he would shrink back when he saw a familiar face. Chin Mo hung up the phone. His eyes were so cold that no one could feel any warmth. Ticket inspector. It was fortunate that she had planned it so thoroughly. She had been acting so well. Had she been trying to escape from the start? Chin Mo had always been someone who had difficulty sensing the emotions around him. It had been since he was young. He had always been able to suppress his emotions. But even so, there was also a hint of confusion in his eyes. He sat there as if he was alone. He clenched his fingers, like a pine tree in a green mountain. What he cared about was never that guy's restless habits. Where did the ticket inspector uniform come from? How did that guy avoid the crowd and sneak into the theater one step ahead of them? During the race, was that guy looking at the route or someone? These thoughts flashed through Chin Mo's mind. In the end, they were all swallowed back into his throat, as if they were cut by a knife. But Chin Mo was still Chin Mo. Even so, his gaze was still fixed on the phone in Yu Hongliang's right hand until it vibrated. Chapter 8:36. Yu Hongliang's eyes lit up when he saw the message. He took a sip of his iced coffee, as though that was the only way to suppress the uncontrollable excitement in his heart. The first time he did something like infecting others, he was still afraid. But the second time, he tasted incomparable joy. There were so many people in this world who deserved to die. Why was he the only victim? If it wasn't for the vanity of some women, he wouldn't have contracted this damned disease. Yu Hongliang, the young master of the Yu family, liked to play on a daily basis and was often seen at night. He had originally thought that he would have to stay at home, unable to even leave. Fortunately, God was on his side, opening another window for him. That person was right. Since he was going to leave, he might as well drag these bad women to hell with him. They would cling on to him the moment they saw money. Then he would make them suffer. The closer they got, the better. Wasn't it just money? This amount of money was enough to buy their lives. Yu Hongliang caressed his watch, his eyes burning with bloodlust. He seemed to have lost his humanity. How could such a person notice the Almighty behind him? Qin Mo didn't change, his side profile calm, as though he wouldn't be surprised by any news he heard. Even at this moment, his mind and memory were still terrifying. After sending the message to the group chat, he typed a few more words. Other than Yu Hongliang, there is someone else here. Fatty immediately replied, row 7, number 06. I'll go check now. Qin Mo wasn't in a good mood. His sharp tongue was on full display. Do you think criminals are stupid enough to write their location on a text message? Do you think it's a game of hide and seek between primary school students? MMH. Qin Mo's MMH sent chills down his spine. Fatty choked for a moment. He finally understood Little Spade's influence on Boss. It couldn't be seen on the surface. It was all hidden in his heart. In the cinema, Qin Mo lifted his lids, taking 2 glances at the cinema. He had an answer in his heart. Row 7, number 06 is a trap, the outermost on the right, from the 1st to the 15th row. Mark the location according to the serial number and give me a list. Yes. After listening to Qin Mo's explanation, Fatty came to a sudden realization. From the beginning of the case, the other party was best at escaping. Moreover, his plan was meticulous and he wouldn't make any mistakes at the crucial moment. Indeed, there should be something in row 706, but even if there was something, it didn't mean that the person was there. It could even be said to be more serious. This could very well be a trap set by the other party. He purposely gave a number for them to check. Once it was investigated, they would receive the news. After receiving the news, that melon kid Yu Hongliang didn't make a move. They wouldn't even be able to get a fish on this trip. After all, the other party still had a hacker. Even though it was a fake. But this impersonator's level was really not much different from Z. They had to be on guard. At this moment, it was time to see who could keep their composure. Qin Mo was indeed nonchalant. Other than grabbing a certain someone and breaking her claws, he didn't care. However, even through the phone, Fatty could feel his boss's heart. Otherwise, the question, how long until the movie is over, really didn't sound like something the young master, who had always been indifferent, would say. Little Spade, oh Little Spade. Don't let young master catch you. Chapter 837. At this moment, Bojiu was observing her surroundings. When she saw Magician coming down the stairs. Then she stood up. Fatty wouldn't be able to guess that she was Little Spade even if she was caught by the surveillance cameras. After all, no single person would be carrying 2 cups of Coke. Bojiu stood among the cosplay bears, her brows arched as she bit the Coke. She looked arrogant and handsome, like a hot-blooded high school's boss. Her entire body was filled with 4 words, rich and willful. She looked like she was waiting for her girlfriend, her posture a little unhappy. Once or twice, the surveillance cameras scanned her, but she was ignored by Fatty. It wasn't that he didn't care, he just couldn't tell. After all, Fatty wasn't Almighty Qin. On the 3rd time, Bojiu followed the crowd into the elevator. She wasn't sure where the Almighty was. Was he going to catch her when she was about to run away like last time? Even though Hoshino had told her that there was no one at the ceiling, she hadn't taken that route. Besides, she hadn't finished what she wanted to do. Bojiu arched a brow, stuffing a hand into her pocket. When the elevator stopped, she walked out. Since she couldn't touch her computer, she would find a temporary replacement. In a large shopping mall, on the exclusive floor of the high-end computer, there was an alien's mechanical keyboard. There was a huge screen in the middle, broadcasting the National League's game in high definition. Bojo stood there, watching intently for a while. Then she made a comment that was pertinent to her. "Supreme Alliance is really cool." The staff walked over with a smile. "Sir, you seem to be a gaming fan, you should be familiar with our brand." Bojo, who had touched many brands of electronic products, replied humbly, "It's all right, that's all." "How about this, we have a trial machine here, do you want to try out the keyboard and the smoothness of the graphics?" The staff was good at marketing. Bojo laughed arrogantly. "If I say I'm a professional player in the video, can I try for another 10 minutes? The staff gave her a, "You sure know how to joke" expression. "Sir, all of our computers are connected to the internet, you can try it for half an hour until you find a computer you like. Even if you aren't a professional player, you can still try it. The price will still be discounted." In other words, she wasn't pretending to be a professional player, she was just buying something. All right. Bojo thought to herself that she wasn't lying this time. Unfortunately, no one believed her. Before she tried it out, she praised herself. This first kill was beautiful. The staff watched as the customer continued to stare at Spade Z's ID, agreeing with her. Indeed, such smooth movements aren't something anyone can achieve. Good taste. Bojo reached out and patted his shoulder. The shop assistant who was suddenly patted on the shoulder was dumbfounded. This allowed her to fight for a more suitable trial computer. According to the shop assistant, since this person liked Spade Z so much, he would definitely buy the computer series for the Supreme Alliance. This machine has a hard keyboard with fast keystrokes. The graphics card has been upgraded. Don't be fooled by its clumsy appearance. The kernel is very fast. Bojo tapped the keyboard with her index finger and smiled. "I'll use this one." He could send the information to the key case investigation unit without leaving any traces. Chapter 838. The shop assistant thought that the young man with the headband in front of him was a rich young master who had come to choose a game console. After introducing the console, he had other customers to attend to. But he didn't know that right after he left. The black-haired youngster with the headphones smirked. She took out a USB with her left hand and intervened without a trace. A dialog box popped up. It was a very small part, but the code was running non-stop. Z was best at hacking. It was the integration of resources. Thousands of computers around her worked for her at the same time. No matter who it was, the firewall of a commercial plaza wasn't very tight. It was vulnerable in front of a hacker. Hence, it wasn't difficult to infiltrate. The difficult part was to find traces of other intruders without being hunted down by others. This was the most profound hacking technique. Most people would choose to find an entry point from the surveillance room. But Bojo chose to avoid this point. She didn't stay in the surveillance room and directly controlled the cinema network. Some people said that if she infiltrated the cinema system, she would be discovered immediately. After all, the bar counter required tickets. Don't forget. There was something called the movie ticket collection machine. It was connected to the cinema network and the cinema network was connected to the entire mall network. When the image unfolded, the youngster's long fingers on the keyboard suddenly sped up. The clicking sound was hidden in the hustle and bustle of the crowd. Even if someone heard it, they would think that someone was playing a game. Everyone who had been to a large computer experience store would know what it was like. Other than the sound of the keyboard, there was only the sound of the game. Moreover, with the popularity of Hero, no one could tell what she was up to. No one would notice the change in her gaze. Like a rising crow, she flew through the 3D map formed by the IP address and headed straight for the center. It was just an instant. The firewall was destroyed. The youngster's beautiful thin lips opened slightly. Let the hunt begin. Swoosh. The computer was operating at high speed. A couple who were collecting their tickets were puzzled. Why did the ticket collection machine in front of them suddenly stop working? They called the staff over. The staff took a glance and smiled. It's a malfunction. You can use the ticket collection machine at the side. But the one next door wasn't that effective. 5 ticket collection machines malfunctioned at the same time. The staff thought it was a network problem. After all, it only stopped working for a minute. A minute later, everything was restored. No one paid attention to the hall. Other than the special forces who had come here, anything abnormal at this time would be a problem. This had always been his principle. He pressed on his earpiece and said in a low voice, "Young master, there's a situation. The ticketing machine is malfunctioning. I suspect that someone is attacking the network." When Chi Nemo heard that, he typed 2 words with his fingers. Fatty. Fatty was a little flustered. After all, he was the one in charge of monitoring the abnormalities in the network. However, he said, there are no abnormalities in the surveillance room. Chi Mo's eyes dimmed. His typing hand was beautiful, giving off an aura of abstinence. Nothing out of the ordinary is the biggest anomaly. Fatty, don't move, continue watching the surveillance. Wolf, find out which floor the electronic experience store is on. Don't use the mall's internet, ask someone, use the most primitive method. The Special Forces soldier received the order and moved immediately. Chi Nemo sat on the spot, the coldness in his eyes at its lowest. Fatty didn't know that. At this moment, he had become Bojio's first target. The enter key rang. A page appeared on the screen in front of the youngster. The owner of the page was still watching the surveillance. He hadn't expected anyone to discover his location so quickly. When Bojio saw that face, she arched a brow. She didn't attack. Since they were from the same team, she wouldn't start a conflict at this time. Of course, more importantly, if she teased Fatty and alerted him, it wouldn't be worth it. But the Almighty was ruthless. Such a comprehensive surveillance. Was he trying to catch them all in one fell swoop? Bojio caressed the bridge of her nose, feeling slightly guilty. She glanced at the virtual IP settings in the mall, widening the search area. Her fingers moved swiftly, without any pause. The so-called network attack usually altered the original data. As long as she found the altered data, she would be able to find out the infiltration route. Of course, the most important thing was to hide. Bojio tapped her fingers, hiding her location at the center of the network. It was just like her character in the game, which had an invisibility ability. He could hide in the bushes without moving his expression. He wouldn't even appear on the map. But the moment he appeared, the damage would be off the charts. It was a nightmare for any player with low HP. Bojio had waited after the infiltration was successful. She hadn't followed the infiltration route. Just like Chi Mo, they both felt that this person would definitely have a backup plan. The Almighty wasn't the only one who liked to wait for someone to be captured, it was the same for her. Bojio leaned back in her chair. When her black hair fell, her lips curved upwards, a naughty smile that was pleasing to the eyes. The staff walked over. How is it? Isn't it very fast? Not bad, especially when it comes to capturing someone. It saves a lot of time, Bojio replied honestly. The staff glanced at the chat box on the screen. She was a true hero fanatic. She hadn't even opened the game page and was still fantasizing about capturing someone. He wanted to ask more. Bojio arched a brow. Someone seems to be calling you. Business was indeed busy. The staff had no choice but to leave. Bojo glanced at the time displayed on the screen. There were still 20 minutes before the movie ended. Since the other party was imitating her intentionally, he must know that she liked to launch a surprise attack at the end of the movie. Let's see if the other party managed to imitate all of her techniques. Bojo smiled. She switched the page and glanced at the layout. She decided to be a support and send a message to the crime squad. Of course, she wasn't going to do it casually. If the other party could make some adjustments because of her support, her chances of escaping would be greatly increased. 10 minutes was enough for her to send a message. She was familiar with the police's procedures. First, she used her earpiece to record a conversation. Next, she used the virtual IP to connect to the internet phone. Ring, ring, ring. When the phone rang, the police station was still dealing with other matters. Hello. Just the sound alone was enough to tell how noisy it was. Bojo didn't reply. Instead, she clicked on the phone. The AIDS carrier's belongings have been removed from the locker. They are now stored in the potted plant at the exit of the theater. The voice was familiar. It was deep and cold, with an indescribable magnetism. When the police officer heard that it was evidence, he didn't dare to delay. He pushed the door open immediately. The police station had a lot of cases to deal with every day. The team leader was still in the middle of a civil mediation. The moment he heard AIDS carrier, his expression turned solemn. One had to know that this was the most important case in Rivertown so far. How did the call reach them? Without hesitation, the team leader ran over to the phone. After listening to the recording, he dialed Director Huang's number. Director Huang's eyes widened when he heard the important clue. It was important to note that such things were usually evidence. What he was most worried about now was the lack of evidence to arrest Yu Hongliang. But Director Huang wasn't stupid. What was the meaning of this call? Who is it? Director Huang asked. The team leader didn't waste any time, sending the recording over. Director Huang arched a brow when he heard the voice. What the F***CK, it sounded like young Master Qin's voice. No. He had to confirm it. Little Huang's heart was racing. He sent a WeChat message. There's a huge situation. He didn't reply for the first 10 seconds. In the end, there was only one word. Speak. The moment he saw the reply, Director Huang immediately pressed the call button. There was a call from the police station. They said that Yu Hongliang's stuff was stored in the storage cabinet and it's now in the potted plant outside the theater. Yu Hongliang stored it. He didn't even know about it. This time, the person on the other end replied simply, MMH. That's it. Fortunately, just as little Huang was about to explode, a few more words were sent. A few more words appeared on the phone. Since it was delivered by someone, go and get it. Director Huang immediately replied, it wasn't you. The caller adjusted the voice, and it sounded just like you. Luckily, I was smart and didn't fall for it. When I found out about this, the first person I contacted was you. Qin Mo's eyes deepened. That fellow wanted you to inform me. He knew you would hear the recording. Given our relationship, wouldn't he have sought me out for confirmation? Director Huang. This explanation actually made him feel stupid. Qin Mo didn't have to think to know who had sent it. For example, a certain incompetent ticketing inspector. Indeed, the glacier seemed to be melting. But soon, a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Was he trying to lure her away? He would be playing right into her hands. There's no need to guard the air vent, retreat. Retreat? Magician couldn't understand the situation. What's more, he didn't understand that they were basically playing psychological warfare. Sometimes, it was normal for people on the same side to set traps. After all, one was escaping while the other was catching. In front of the computer, Bojo watched as the hunk guarding the ceiling left. Her lips curved upwards. It seemed like the Almighty had received her gift. But she wasn't sure if he liked it. She felt like a domineering CEO trying to please his new sweetheart. She was sincere, but if she didn't do it well, it would cause the other party's disgust. After all, beautiful people tended to have a temper. Her canine pet was just like that. From her heart, Bojo didn't want the Almighty to hate her. Chapter 839. But she didn't have to be too pessimistic. According to the Almighty's personality, he accepted the gift. It was probably because he didn't have any resistance towards the person who gave him the gift. Bojo glanced up. Now, she just needed to catch him. Time was ticking by. At this moment, Yu Hongliang was the only one who was excited. He couldn't control himself anymore. For the third time, he glanced at the sixth seat on the seventh row. The moment he thought about the drug that was hidden there, enough to knock him unconscious. Naturally, that vivid image appeared in his mind. Some women were very playful. There were many lies. With a high status, everything they said was true. For example, this one. Yu Hongliang glanced at the photo that appeared in the chat app. It was obvious that the other party was rushing him. Handsome, where are you? I'm off work, I heard that you're going home. Can you give me a ride? Yu Hongliang wasn't afraid of exposing himself. With that person covering for him, he was at ease. He knew what kind of tricks a girl would fall for. He didn't say that he was in the cinema, instead, he replied, I'm still in a meeting, I'll head out after the staff leave. As expected, the other party smiled. You're a boss. Yu Hongliang smiled. Just a vice president. The bait was released. Some girls were probably inexperienced or had a yearning in their hearts. Hence, they didn't even know how to think. A real vice president wouldn't have the time to let a girl hitch a ride. A real vice president wouldn't be chatting during a meeting. A real vice president would be like Feng Yi, thinking about the development of the company 24/7. Usually, they wouldn't have the time to flirt. Not to mention chatting with someone on this kind of unknown dating app. If they wanted to find someone to sleep with, they wouldn't even be interested in a line of young models. Hence, from the very beginning, when people put themselves in danger, it was often because of greed that caused mischief. The girl didn't realize it was a trap. Instead, she was happy that such a rich person was coming to fetch her. Perhaps, something romantic might happen. 10 minutes before the movie ended. Right at this moment, a computer in the gymnasium on the third floor suddenly emitted a different sound. It was an alarm. An alarm from the firewall that Bojo had set up. Of course. This firewall was different from the one in the cinema. It would only be used for monitoring purposes and wouldn't have any defensive capabilities. In other words, he wouldn't be discovered by the intruders. When Bojo heard that voice, her dark eyes lit up. His fingers began to rapidly write code on the keyboard. Every code was used to decipher the opponent's strength. At this moment, the opponent would not notice anything strange. This was Z's true tactic. 100 miles away, in a large internet cafe, another person was attacking. The method of imitation was very obvious. She had read all the previous information about Z. Creating a diversion was the enemy's best tactic. Row 7, seat 06 was a small alarm that she had imitated Z. The news was just a test. If the person sitting in row 7 seat 06 was not called out, that meant that the theater was safe, and they could act as usual. It was the most convenient way to use a network attack to investigate this information. At the same time, it could also detect the location of all the members of the key case investigation unit. Chapter 840. After Rao Rong received the message, he typed a full stop and sent it to Yu Hongliang. It meant that the surroundings were safe. Yu Hongliang's eyes lit up with excitement. Since it was safe, he could have more fun today. Yu Hongliang couldn't wait any longer. If it wasn't for that person's reminder, he would have waited for the movie to end. He wanted to stand up and leave. But there were only 5 minutes left. The girl in the internet cafe watched her meticulously set up everything, the joy on her face obvious. Especially when she saw the people from the key case investigation unit playing this and that in the surveillance room, the corners of her mouth curled up even more. What was the point? Yu Hongliang just had to bend over in the crowd and he would be able to take it away. From such an angle, it wouldn't be captured by the surveillance cameras. As for the people guarding the entrance, they thought they were in the right place. In reality, they were all wrong. As for the surveillance cameras, she just had to attack them. The girl moved her fingers, as though the entire situation was in her hands. The internet cafe provided lunch. When the auntie came over to ask if she needed anything, the girl glanced at the auntie impatiently, her voice cold. "It's fine, stay away from me." The auntie paused, feeling slightly awkward but didn't say anything. Nowadays, people in their 20s were indeed like that. It wasn't rare to bump into one or two of them every day. She turned and continued asking the next person. The girl moved her fingers, adjusting the original footage. Her gaze was filled with disdain. She adjusted her state and pressed the code. Her next target was the surveillance camera in the corridor of the cinema. She inserted the video she had prepared to cover today's surveillance camera. The video contained the footage of Yu Hongliang watching a movie. Yu Hongliang hadn't left immediately after the movie. Instead, he had stayed for 2 hours in the jewelry shop. She just had to show it to the crime squad. Since Yu Hongliang's car hadn't moved, they would definitely assume that Yu Hongliang hadn't left. It was a perfect plan. After the girl conquered the surveillance room, the smile on her face deepened. She started to try to take control of the surveillance room. It took some time, but it wouldn't take long for the girl to destroy the firewall. In the cinema, Chin Mo glanced up. Behavior could often express a person's heart. He could see the state of Yu Hongliang, who was sitting in front of him. He was anxious and excited. Otherwise, he wouldn't have picked up his phone to check the time again. This was a unique behavior that some criminals displayed when they were about to commit a crime in a serial murder case. Chin Mo's fingers moved slightly. There was less than a minute before the concert ended. He sent 2 words in the group chat. Those 2 words were just like him, noble and domineering. Real in the net. The Special Forces soldier was the first to act. He found the person in charge of the cinema and handed over his ID. He only said one sentence, "We need your company's cooperation." It was finally the end of the movie. Some people still wanted to see more. The clip was already out. Chapter 841. It was a magnetic voice. However, there was a phenomenon in the cinema. When there were a lot of people, before the staff finished speaking, there would be people who would stand up and leave. Rao Rong sat at the outer perimeter. Seeing that everything was going smoothly, he kept his phone and followed the crowd out without anyone noticing. Yu Hongliang stood up, he couldn't wait any longer. He walked down 2 rows, heading towards row 7, seat 06. At this moment, Rao Rong had already left the cinema. He didn't know that Chin Mo was in the same theater as him. Rao Rong didn't notice and Yu Hongliang didn't know that the moment he lifted his foot, the person behind him had already followed him. That was how the game was played. People often said that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Many people thought they were the oriole, but in reality, they were just the mantis. Once the movie ended, this meant that it was time to decide the outcome of the battle. Those who played mind games usually had to do with patience and adaptability. In the large internet cafe, the girl was still doing the video implantation. But at this moment, she suddenly sensed something was amiss. Why was there an extra firewall here? Hackers attacked each other. Some might not have seen it before. The girl narrowed her eyes, wanting to free her hand to tell Rao Rome to cancel the event. But the person on the other end didn't give her the chance. The wave of attacks destroyed the video she had implanted. The girl pressed her fingers on the keyboard. No matter who the other party was, they were courting death. She couldn't bear to see her plan destroyed just like that. She started the virus backlash program. The computers around the internet cafe started operating. Chat boxes kept popping up on the screen. Just by listening to the sound of typing, one could tell that this was an online battle without gunpowder. The incident in the cinema wasn't over yet. Fatty was shocked by the scene in front of him. He was a hacker and knew what the firewall was reacting to. More importantly, what was the meaning of the red dot? Was it luring the other red dot over, hiding behind him and letting the other party attack him? Wait a minute, there were 2 red dots. This meant that there were 2 IPs invading at the same time. F***CK. Young Master had asked him to check the internet for any abnormalities. But he had never been told which side he should help if there were 2 intruders fighting. No. The current situation was completely not a matter of whether he helped or not. What was the meaning of the red dot behind his IP address? Did he think he was playing hero? Did they think he was a tank? What the hell, letting him charge first? He did not move. Right under the tower. Young Master said not to act without orders. We really don't have any chemistry. In the experience store, Bojio reached out to play with her headband, her right hand moving the mouse. She couldn't help but shake her head. If she had teamed up with the Almighty, she would have taken him down long ago. It was no wonder Fatty hadn't made it into the starting lineup. Fatty looked at his computer. He had an inexplicable feeling that the red dot that had circled around him and then suddenly rushed out, as if it was mocking him. Was it an illusion? Fatty pinched his arm, came back to his senses, and quickly made a call. Chapter 842. If Bojio knew that Fatty was making such a call, she would definitely say, "You look more like a fish." In the cinema, Chin Mo listened to the voice from the earpiece. His calm eyes darkened for a moment. 2 fishes, one was the mastermind behind this case. It was obvious who the other one was. But Chin Mo didn't say a word. He continued walking forward like an audience member, his deep gaze landing on Yu Hongliang, who wasn't far from him. Yu Hongliang wished that time would pass faster. Why were there so many people in front of him? Couldn't they move faster? Could they afford to waste his fun time? He tugged his collar, his eyes almost popping out. He saw that he was almost at his destination. He squeezed forward, taking the chance to bend down and pick up the bag. Such actions weren't out of place in the cinema. Since everyone was busy leaving, no one would care about what he was doing. Yu Hongliang knew very well what was inside this beautifully packaged bag. It wasn't easy to get something to liven things up, and it had a knockout effect. Jiang City had always been strict. Especially recently, he didn't know what was going on. They had put in a lot of effort to rectify the situation. Hence, it was difficult for him to buy these things. Fortunately, God was on his side. He was chosen by that person to become the pioneer to eliminate sins. Unclean things would be eliminated. That was what he wanted to do. Next, the hunting game began again. Yu Hongliang watched as his phone lit up. He lowered his head and typed, "I'll be." Before he could type out the word, he saw a person standing at the front of the row, with one hand in his pocket, blocking his way. Yu Hongliang lifted his head. He had an impression of this person, mainly because of the scar on his face. "Excuse me." Yu Hongliang didn't take the other party seriously. He didn't like people interrupting or even delaying him when he was doing something. But the next second, his expression changed. Because of the person's voice. "Mr. Yu Hongliang, right?" That person's voice was very indifferent, with a kind of condescending tone. It was like an aura that could only be cultivated over the years. Yu Hongliang wasn't dumb. At this time, for a stranger to call out his full name, it was obvious that something had happened. Yu Hongliang shuddered and wanted to run away. Qin Mo didn't chase after him. Instead, he slowly walked down the row. It was precisely because of this man's actions. Only then did Yu Hongliang feel even more pressured. Compared to the other party's nonchalance, his panic made him look like a mouse that was jumping around randomly. He was completely unaware that he was trapped in a glass cage. Yu Hongliang panicked and wanted to force his way out while there were still people watching. Who knew that just as he raised his fist, before he could even get close to that person's body, he was kicked half a meter away by that person. Clang! When Yu Hongliang's back hit the seat, he felt a piercing pain in his heart. He really did not expect that his opponent would be defeated in one move. This kind of noise was bound to cause panic. Everyone turned to look at Qin Mo. The staff immediately picked up the headset and hurriedly said, "Security, security. There's a fight going on in Hall 6. Help." It was a chaotic scene. Some of the girls even screamed when they saw Qin Mo beating them up. Yu Hongliang wanted to escape since the situation was out of his control. Maybe the people watching the movie could help him. But it was a pity that Yu Hongliang met Qin Mo. Yu Hongliang watched as the man stood in the crowd, saying, "Police are on a case, leave the venue to the left." In an instant, the atmosphere changed. There was a huge empty space between him and the man. When the man walked towards him, Yu Hongliang didn't sense the presence of a police officer. Instead, he felt like prey trapped by a devil. He couldn't break free. It was impossible for Rao Rong, who had just walked out of the hall, to not notice the panic. His first reaction was that something had happened. It wasn't wise to turn back, he wanted to leave as soon as possible. But before he could walk out of the theater, a crime squad member who was checking something at the exit stopped him. "Apologies, sir, due to your seat, please follow us." Rao Rong's fingers tightened in his pocket, his face expressionless. "Seat? I don't know where I lost my ticket, I need to check it." The crime squad member didn't reply directly. "Follow us and you'll know." Rao Rong didn't resist, it would be a sign of guilt. Instead, he raised his hand, speaking to the crime squad member. "I play sports, can I call my team member? We have agreed to train together tonight, I'm afraid he might be anxious." "Apologies, I'm afraid not." The crime squad member took a step forward. Rao Rong smiled faintly, keeping his phone. "All right then." He put his phone away because he noticed that he wasn't the only one under suspicion. The police had stopped the others as well. The other party had said it was because of the seat. Rao Rong narrowed his eyes. What exactly was it that made him a suspect as well? The person in row 7, seat 06, had already left. Wait, could it be? From the very beginning, the bait and alarm that they had thrown out had already been seen through. The commotion was heard. The Special Forces soldier was the first to rush into the theater. Behind him was the person in charge of the theater. When the staff saw their boss, they kept their earphones, believing that it was really the police. The Special Forces soldier walked over to Chin Mo, speaking in a low voice, "Young master." Chin Mo's gaze was calm. "I'll leave this person to you, send him along with the evidence to Director Huang for an hour. Don't let him interfere with the interrogation, we'll talk about it when I arrive." "Yes." The Special Forces soldier wanted to say something. But his boss turned, tugging on his suit jacket as he walked towards the exit. He looked as though he was going to settle someone, his entire body exuding a murderous aura. Honestly speaking, he had never seen his young master in such a hurry. Although it wasn't obvious from his gait. His left hand was holding onto his phone, it was obvious that if there wasn't a criminal for him to catch, boss would have left a long time ago. The boss had left a long time ago. Why would it wait until now? The Special Forces soldier wondered why his young master was suppressing his anger. He had never liked to take action, but now, he had sent the suspect to the ground with a single kick. It was better to just gossip in his heart. He definitely wouldn't ask. Chapter 843. Yes. Coyote himself was on the third floor. He was the fastest to act. Fatty was still hesitating. He looked at the two red dots that triggered the alarm. He really didn't know if he should intervene or not. Don't intervene. His hands were itching to just watch. If he intervened, who should he help? From Fatty's point of view, the red dot closest to him seemed a little weak. It didn't seem as strong as the one opposite him. But that wasn't a reason for him to intervene. He didn't forget that the red dot seemed to have mocked him just now. Don't intervene. Stay under the tower. In the internet cafe, the girl looked at the data that she gradually broke down. Her lips curled up. Overestimating themselves. They still wanted to catch her. She wanted to see who would be the one to catch who. The girl's fingers flew across the keyboard as if she was torturing someone. This made her sweet face have an expression that a girl like her shouldn't have. It seemed to be twisted, but it wasn't. She hated everyone who interrupted her plan. For example, the current situation. Not only did they ruin her carefully prepared video, they also made her miss the opportunity to leave clues. She was supposed to leave those traces of the imitation of Z to the police. Now, the girl narrowed her eyes. She was going to destroy the other party's computer. Even as a bystander, Fatty's computer sent out a warning. Not to mention the firewall of the cinema. In fact, once the network here completely collapsed, even the elevator would be out of service. Because in today's society, the operation of everything couldn't be separated from the network. In this case, it would be very difficult for the crime squad to take the corresponding person away. The monitoring network had already begun to be affected, and all the video screens had turned white. If the entire mall's network collapsed, Fatty didn't dare to imagine that situation. This wasn't just an esports scene. It was also the most prosperous area in Jiang City. During such a holiday, many children and old people would be shopping with their families. It was past 7 in the evening. It was the busiest time. If something were to stop operating, it would definitely cause everyone to panic. And everyone knew what panic meant. Children and old people would be squeezed around. A stampede was Fatty's instinctive reaction. However, the one that was attacking them did not seem to care about this at all. It was as if it was willing to send the entire mall to hell with it to complete this victory. At this moment, Fatty didn't think about whether he should intervene or not. In his eyes, this person was simply hateful. A real hacker shouldn't be like this. Just as he was about to press the keyboard to stop that person, the computer couldn't keep up. It could even be said that because of the cyber attack, it had become very slow. F***CK. Fatty's hand slammed on the keyboard. The girl in the internet cafe was still smiling. According to the current situation, something must have happened to Yu Hongliang. He might as well take the opportunity to attack the mall's system. Not only would it allow Rao Rong to leave without leaving any traces, it would also erase all the loopholes. Most importantly, rumor had it that Z always did things this way. Every time he appeared, he would let others know that he had been here before. If that was the case. Chapter 844. The girl's mind was deep. Even though she looked harmless. Inside, there seemed to be a dark river flowing. Yu Hongliang was just a tool to her. Although it was useful. But it was just child's play. She and Rao Rong came first to see how the crime squad was doing. It was obviously improving. But this improvement wasn't enough to threaten her. Let Z appear in the world. All the focus would be shifted. It was perfect for such an occasion. When the internet was down and everyone was in a panic. It would be Z's declaration of war against the police. Wasn't it a perfect plan? The girl laughed, her gaze frighteningly cold as she launched a new wave of attacks. It was to crush the other party and destroy the internet in the shopping mall. Right now, Fatty wished he had a computer with him. But in reality, this problem couldn't be solved. The so-called internet attack was the spread of a virus. Although the red dot that mocked him was a little weak, the red dot that he was fighting against was a little weak. Fatty hoped that a miracle would happen, that person would be able to hold on and not be bitten to death. 7:15 p.m. The crime squad hadn't finished recording all the names on the list. Except for the cinema. The people on the other floors were still enjoying their holiday time. Especially the restaurants on the 6th floor, almost all of them were full. It was normal to queue up for a meal in Jiang City. The sound of children playing could be heard. Everything seemed so beautiful. They didn't notice the approaching danger. It wasn't that there wasn't any danger. Instead, many people would get rid of the danger when it came. The crime squad wouldn't affect the other floors when they caught someone. Even Qin Mo's actions were the same. Perhaps many people would say that this place wasn't good, that place wasn't good. But China had a peace that no other country had. The peace came from the people who fought against the dark forces but never spoke up. The laughter in the shopping mall grew louder. More and more sweat appeared on Fatty's forehead. It was too late to evacuate the crowd. He didn't even have time to inform his young master. A hacker usually wouldn't last more than 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Even if his young master knew about it, how was he going to evacuate? Fatty scratched his head and decided to make the call. Young master, the other party intends to destroy the entire network operating system of the mall. My computer can't run anymore. The worst-case scenario is that once the other party succeeds, the entire mall will lose all network control and power supply. There will definitely be panic. The best-case scenario is that the other person is resisting, but there is a difference, which means that the other person will be bitten to death by the other party. Hearing this, everyone who was moving stopped in their tracks. Whether it was the man codenamed Wolf, the special forces, or the magician who was good at disguise. These people were all from the army. The bravery of a soldier had never changed, and that was to protect. After hearing such news, the special forces soldier clenched his fists tightly, raising his head abruptly. Young master. Chapter 845. Yes. The Special Forces soldier's eyes lit up when he received the order. He turned to report the situation to the person in charge. The person in charge's expression froze. He hurried to the broadcasting room, making use of the time he could still do something to broadcast the news. The entire process took less than a minute. The entire shopping mall, the places that were originally playing music turned silent. This included the restaurants, cafes, and the entire plaza. Everything became very quiet at this moment. A gentle voice came next. Bojo wasn't wearing earphones at the Electronic Equipment Experience Center on the 3rd floor. Hence, she could hear the contents of the broadcast clearly. After hearing that, the corners of her mouth curled up. It was a very good idea. She would give everyone a charity event that would save energy to calm them down. That way, when the power went out, they wouldn't panic and cause harm. She had to admit that the Almighty was as wise as ever. It was a good idea. But she wouldn't let that happen. When Bojo glanced up, her fingers were still tapping slowly on the keyboard. She could adapt to the darkness, but that didn't mean everyone could. The goal of a hacker was not to bring those things to ordinary people. At this moment, the person in charge of the shopping mall was tormented. He knew that the idea in front of him was indeed a good one. But once the power went out for more than 10 minutes, anyone in the situation would feel uneasy. Especially in a place like the shopping mall. That was human nature. They could survive the first 10 minutes, but what would happen after that? Even if there was an emergency passageway, it wouldn't be good. No, it should be because there was an emergency passageway in the shopping mall. Once there was darkness, everyone would run towards the emergency passageway. When that happened, who would listen to others and walk slowly? No one would. If everyone would listen, there wouldn't be so many stampedes. The person in charge wiped the sweat off his forehead. He picked up his phone but didn't know who he should call. He thought that cyberterrorism was something that only appeared in movies. But when it actually happened, the person in charge finally understood how uneasy it was. Is that all? Don't we need to do anything else? The Special Forces soldier glanced at him, his gaze filled with an indescribable determination. Someone is doing it, don't worry. The person in charge stilled, not saying a word. Now, he believed that there was no such thing as peace and prosperity in this world. Instead, there were people carrying burdens. As long as he saw the army green, he would feel a sense of security. Perhaps, such a feeling could only be felt in Huaxia. In the past, he had always listened to it, so he hadn't been able to feel it. Chapter 846. Time passed bit by bit. Fatty was still pulling his hair and refusing to let go. He was really worried that the entire network would collapse in the next second. The girl in the internet cafe had already tasted the sweetness and her eyes darkened. How would that person deal with such a big feast? She raised her right hand, as though she was about to press the space bar to deliver a fatal blow. But in the next second, the girl's eyes suddenly widened. It was as though something had happened. Her fingers were typing rapidly. Where? How is that possible? That guy was here just now. The cracked thing was actually useless. This was impossible. How was this possible? Fatty, who had been watching the battle, was also shocked. He couldn't believe his eyes. One of the red dots that was supposed to be emitted by the firewall suddenly disappeared. It wasn't an attack. Did it disappear on its own? Was it planning to retreat? No, that wasn't right. No matter how powerful the hacker was or how fast he retreated, there would always be traces left on the network. It was just a matter of whether one could track it or not. But this one was completely different. If it wasn't for the fact that the timing wasn't right, Fatty would really want to ask how exactly it was done. He looked at the screen and licked his lips nervously. The attacker was also looking for that person. It was the feeling of knowing that the other party was nearby but not knowing where he was or when he would appear. Wait a minute. Fatty paused. Why did he feel that this situation was so familiar? Where had he seen such a situation before? Fatty knocked on his head. On the third floor, the youngster was sitting in front of the computer. Her hands were nimbly typing on the keyboard. The constantly moving screen reflected the youngster's face. Her black hair was tied with a headband and she looked indescribably evil. She looked a little like a rich young master. Her chiseled side profile and white pointed chin were very prominent at this moment. Click, click, click. The rhythmic tapping sounded as though she was planning an attack. Many people around the youngster began to discuss because of the broadcast. Someone asked, "What's going on? Is the power going to be cut off?" Even some people who were playing the game stopped what they were doing. Including the primary school students who were wearing VR glasses, they were also in the queue. There would be a lot of voices coming from all sides. Some people and some decisions were made to protect the public. He would still say, "What's the situation? Why is it so troublesome? But if only think of those who don't deserve it. You'll miss out on the people who deserve it." Such a thing. Bojo knew this better than anyone. It could be said that such an environment was not conducive to online hunting. Because the moment would interrupt her thoughts. But it did not stop. No matter what kind of sound came from the surroundings. Understanding, not understanding, pretending to understand but denying the practice, or directly criticizing. Those who lived in comfort would not necessarily be able to experience this comfort. In the end, who would be the one to carry what would be brought to them? Bojo was different from the Almighty. She treated people differently. But there were some things she had to do. Maintain the original order. No innocent people involved. Protect the lives of others. This was a hacker's code of conduct. If the other party didn't even understand this point, in that case, this person wasn't fit to be a hacker. What's more, it was a hacker pretending to be her. Chapter 847. The sound of the keyboard finally sped up. It was completely different from before. Even when the youngster raised his hand, his slender fingers seemed to be able to shake out a shadow. If the sound of the keyboard just now was a slow movement, then now it was like a piano piece reaching its climax. The blade that flowed like water was raised. Fatty watched as the red dot suddenly appeared, like an eagle spreading its wings. Without any warning, it directly pierced through the opponent's heart. In the internet cafe, the girl's expression changed. This time, it was really twisted. She typed on the keyboard, trying to avoid such a fatal wound. But it was useless. The spread of the network virus hit the center. All her escape routes seemed to be blocked. She couldn't get out at all. How could it be? When she came in, there was no defense in this place. In such a short period of time, even she couldn't create a firewall on the spot. The girl bit her lip, an unprecedented black mist bursting out of her eyes. Unless, before she infiltrated, all these firewalls existed. But they were hidden. Just like the red dot just now. She deciphered an address and thought it was real. But in fact, it was just the first point of the opponent. The girl's eyes trembled. At this moment, she seemed to realize something. He didn't hesitate to destroy one of the networks just to retreat. But he couldn't retreat. All the weaknesses in the previous attacks were a disguise. But why did he disguise it? Was it to capture her? There was a saying that one would only see what they saw from different angles. As a bystander, if Fatty didn't understand why the red dot circling around him would wait until now to increase its hand speed. Then now, he completely understood. This person wasn't weak. It wasn't that he couldn't defeat the opponent. But if there was no firewall set up in the situation, any network attack would destroy the mall's network. On the surface, the red dot seemed to be resisting the opponent's attack. In fact, it was far more than that. The most important thing was the firewall that even he didn't know when that guy had built. The firewall that protected the entire mall's network. Those who hadn't conducted network attacks might not understand. If he had to make an analogy, it was like when the flames of war were coming. That person did not evade all of the enemy's attacks, which resulted in his battle robe being burned by the surging artillery fire. The shadow that existed on the network stood up with the support of the long sword. The shopping mall behind him was covered by a protective shield because of his actions, so it would not be destroyed by anything. That person stood in front of the shopping mall like a god of war. He raised his sword and charged forward. He was so fierce that he wouldn't lose to anyone. At that time, Fatty was shocked. Everyone knew what had happened to him. In the past, he really didn't know anything other than computers. He didn't have any education or looks. All he did was play games, run errands, and repair computers. If young master hadn't found him, perhaps he would always be like this. He still remembered that at that time, his young master was just a high school student. He was a very cold person, but he only told him one sentence. I have never been a hacker before, but I feel that the value of a hacker should not be like this. No matter what industry it is, the truly strong will not harm the people around them. A true hacker will use attack techniques to defend and maintain order in the virtual world. I hope you can do the same in the future. Fatty always remembered this sentence. But when he actually saw someone do it, the shock in his heart was indescribable. He stood in the darkness to defend against attacks from all directions. Fatty decided to tell his young master about this. He had to tell him. Hence, when he spoke, his words were a little incoherent. Young master, that red dot that mocked me, it doesn't seem to be a bad one. It's amazing, not only did it create a new firewall to cover the entire shopping mall's main network, it is also tracking the attacker. Do you think I should try fighting it? It can even turn invisible, do you know that? It's really sick and handsome. Chi Nemo listened to Fatty's description without a change in expression. He gestured to the people around him. He was already at the entrance of the 3rd floor, his eyes deep. She was very handsome, sitting at the innermost part of the experience store. Especially when the corners of her mouth curled up as she typed. In contrast, the girl sitting in the internet cafe was sitting there. Not only did her expression change, but as the attack came, it also changed. That jumpy chat box was no longer under her control. The operation of the computer was starting to crumble under such attacks. If there was a sound from the network, there would definitely be a crackling sound. It followed the current and attacked the opponent's motherboard. Everyone knew that the core of a computer was the motherboard. Once the motherboard was destroyed, it meant that the phone would be scrapped. A virus attack, a professional virus attack, once the operating speed couldn't keep up, the motherboard could easily be destroyed. There was a loud bang. The girl's right hand that was holding the mouse slammed heavily onto the computer table. The loud sound immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding people. The players turned around in shock. When they saw that the person who had smashed the mouse in anger was actually a girl, they exchanged glances. What's going on? I don't know. Why did her computer screen turn black? Who am I supposed to ask? I say, you bunch of pigs, can't you smell anything? Of course, I'm hungry. I really want to eat black pepper beef today. That's why I can smell a nice pepper smell. I'll order this when we go for the hero instance dungeon later. What the F***ck, the pepper smell is from the motherboard, the computer's motherboard is burnt, pig. With such a shout. This caused everyone's attention to be focused on the girl. The girl's eyes were very dark, but her face was covered by her long hair, so people couldn't see her expression clearly. But just the aura emanating from her body made people feel that it was both sweet and gloomy. It was really very strange. Of course, the boss of the internet cafe had to come over after such a big incident. At this moment, the girl moved. Leaving this place immediately was the most important thing for her to do. Even if the motherboard was destroyed, at least her position wasn't exposed. But was it really not exposed? The girl had just stood up when she heard a cry of surprise coming from the entire internet cafe. What's going on? Where's my game screen? What's the meaning of this? The mouse isn't even moving. Our team is still in the dungeon and getting the first kill. Don't trick me, bro. Hearing that. Chapter 848. All the screens on the row of computers she was in had stopped working. Only 3 words appeared on them. Is it fun? The girl froze. Her fists tightened. She had been discovered. How could it be? Who exactly was it? Who exactly was it? On the 3rd floor of the mall, Bojo lifted her thin lips. Successful hunt. She didn't need to explain anything. Fatty watched helplessly as the viruses were eliminated one by the defense system. He was extremely agitated, wishing he could go up and fight with the other party. Only Hoshino frowned as he sat beside the floor-to-ceiling window. He kept making calls until finally, someone picked up. He didn't waste any time, his gentle voice carrying his usual calmness. Someone went to the 3rd floor. There are the most people on the east and west sides. There's something wrong with the air vent. Bojo arched a brow. She held on to her phone and was about to stand up when she caught sight of the Special Forces soldier walking over. Her gaze deepened. Leave first, I'll think of something. Hoshino glanced up, his gaze as clear as jade. We both know that even if young Master Fu's identity is suspected, Chin Mo wouldn't be sure it's you. No one would expect someone to turn into someone else. Why did you change your plan and leave now? You like to play games, right? Bojo paused, but before she could reply, Hoshino's voice came over again. If it's because of other reasons, it isn't worth it to give up on something you like. Regardless of what happens, even if there are some things you can't change, as an international MVP professional player, I can tell you that Supreme Alliance isn't a match for Xiangnan without you. Bojo's fingers stilled. Hoshino glanced at the lights outside the window. Let's go back after the National League. I know you won't be satisfied until the competition is over. I want to compete now. Bojo glanced at the carpet searching the building. I'm afraid I won't have the chance. Hoshino heard the gloomy sigh and laughed. There's a Supreme Alliance uniform under the seat you're sitting on. Bojo's eyes lit up. Wear it if you like it. Hoshino flicked open the pack of cigarettes. You've always been smarter than me. I believe you should have an idea of how to escape now. Bojo smiled. The IP address will be transferred. You can leave, but Ben will stay. I will send the virus removal program to you. Once it's done, the program will automatically collapse. Fatty has been guarding for so long, he has to give the other party a location. All right. Hoshino stood up. The knitted sweater he was wearing always gave people a sense of breathtaking cleanliness. Especially when he stood up, took his coffee cup, and left from the high chair beside the floor-to-ceiling window. Many girls turned back to look. However, no one could see that the black hair fell in an instant, covering his eyes. However, the corners of his mouth were curved into a smile. There was such a person. The reason why it became a special existence. It wasn't just liking. Somehow, he wanted to play a game with Z. Even if they weren't in the same team. It didn't matter. This was Hoshino's deepest feeling after watching Supreme Alliance's entire match. If there was anyone in this world that shouldn't be let down, that was when that person shouldered something that ordinary people couldn't. Chapter 849. The search on the third floor was still ongoing, with people standing at every exit. When Chin Mo walked over, he reached out to remove the scar on his face. His imposing handsomeness washed over them. The crime squad didn't bother looking at him. But even so, the people in the vicinity could feel the formless coldness. Criminology experts weren't something they could understand. Some of them weren't from the same generation as Chin Mo. She wasn't sure how this young Master Chin, who had the air of a business elite, suddenly became a criminologist. Director Huang had even used a special method to hand over all of their operations to him, giving him full authority over them. Some of them hadn't been assured at the start. They had been through fire and water, through many cases to come out. But the person in front of them was of noble birth. Would he know how to handle cases? They admitted that was their first impression. But just now, they found out that all the suspects had been pinpointed through this person's psychological profiling. That wasn't all, they had never encountered such a situation before. The moment the suspect moved, he was caught red-handed by the witness and evidence. He seemed to be able to predict everything. He was indeed a little godly. It wasn't that they hadn't interacted with criminology experts before, but there weren't many like him. They couldn't even understand his actions. Compared to arresting people, the man looked more like he was taking a stroll. His left hand was stuffed into his trouser pocket, his deep gaze sweeping across the area, attracting many heads. Just as Chin Mo was about to enter the next experience store, the earpiece on his left ear rang again. It was Fatty again, sounding excited. "Boss, it's safe." Not only did that person secure the mall's network, but he also took the opportunity to hack into the other party's computer. Just now, when the other party wasn't paying attention, I traced the IP address. This person is now in the cafe on the second floor. I think he's cleaning up the remaining network viruses. Second floor. Chin Mo arched a brow. Fatty was still excited. MMH. Fatty. Chin Mo pressed down on his earpiece, his black hair falling down, his voice flat. Do you think your hacking skills are better or the other party's? Fatty was humble. I'm not as good as the expert yet. Therefore, there's only one possibility for you to be able to trace the other party's IP address. That is, the expert you speak of deliberately left an opening for you. With that, Chin Mo turned his head, his eyes filled with indifference. Don't leave the third floor, arrange for a team to head to the cafe on the second floor. When Fatty heard this, he was immediately puzzled. If the expert really did it on purpose, that would be too cunning. He wanted to use the information he gave to lure the young master away. How could they be so shameless? The facts proved that Fatty was still thinking too little. Bo Jio had never expected such a simple diversion to divert the Almighty's attention. After several exchanges with the Almighty, she knew very well that these moves were useless in front of the Almighty. She did all this just for the time difference. Because she was very clear. On the third floor, every exit was guarded. Even if she could change her appearance, it would be very difficult for her to pass through the layers of checks. Not to mention that she was sitting in a computer experience store. They would definitely find her. Since this was the case, you're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.